On today's video, I have a very special guest, jazz guitarist, teacher, and YouTuber Jens Larsen to answer Learn Jazz Standards subscriber questions. Lots of really good jazz questions are asked, and Jens really delivers some killer answers. That's all coming right up. Hey, what's up? Brent here from Learn Jazz Standards, which is a blog, a podcast, and videos all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. If you don't want to miss anything that goes on this channel, then press the subscribe button below. I don't want you to miss out on anything. Now, like I said, I have Jens Larsen on this video to help me answer some questions from Learn Jazz Standards community subscribers on YouTube and on Facebook. I really am excited about this. You know, Jens is someone that I really look up to as a musician and an educator. He's an amazing guitarist. I've been following his channel for a while, and I want to make sure that you're doing that too. So I'll have that linked up in the card above and in the card below. Make sure you're checking out Jens Larsen's stuff. It's really good for all instruments, but especially for jazz guitarists. I know you're going to love his content if you aren't checking it out already. All right, let's jump into the first question. Alex Tripp and Ingrid Ayarza want to know, what are his techniques for organically incorporating new vocabulary into his soloing? Whenever I learn a new lick, it tends to sound contrived when I try and work it into a solo.
I never really spent time working on licks in that way for just that reason, because if you're trying to play a lick and it sounds like you're copy-pasting a block from another solo into your own solo, then it doesn't really work, and that never really worked for me. So what I do with this is that I'll take a very small fragment and then try and work on getting that into my playing. And the way that I work on that is that I'm composing or maybe improvising slowly, however you want to think about it, other licks using the same idea. So you first need to figure out what is the great thing about a line, and then you need to try and work on making other lines with it, just using other chords and other scales and arpeggios and whatever you need. And so if we take this one, which is simple bebop cliche, and the only thing that's interesting about this lick, to me anyway, is that 6 interval. So I would just really see if I could focus on coming up with different lines that use the 6 interval, and see if I can come up with something that also works like this one. So and just slowly sit down and see if in any way I can sort of just come up with something that will have that type of interval and that I can use in that way. So and there are just different variations on it, and I'll just sit and figure that out. Of course, I'm doing it a little bit fast right now because I only have a short amount of time, but really just slowly spending time composing, and in that way internalizing stuff and getting used to hearing it and putting it together with all the other stuff that you play. That's what works for me.
I personally really love Jens's approach here with licks. I think it's really cool. And the other thing I'd like to add is try to change the way you're actually thinking about why you learn licks. Because if you do learn licks just to play them verbatim, they will sound contrived. Instead, understand that the reason why you are learning this stuff is to learn the language, the jazz language, the bebop language, all these different things so that you can hear it. Because ultimately, improvisation comes down to hearing. And if you can't hear it, then you're probably not going to be able to actually improvise it. So change the reason in your head why you do this, and I think that also can help give you a different frame of reference. Trumpet 18 says, I've had solos on piano and trumpet, but I can never seem to get a hang on the guitar, for which I've recently picked up. I can play the same licks and transcribe them from other instruments, but it just isn't the same. How do you make a guitar solo sound more guitar-like? How do you bring out the guitar in the solo?
In a way, I think you're kind of answering your question yourself, because you say that you could transcribe the licks, but when you play them it doesn't sound the same. So maybe that's what you need to work on. So if you can transcribe the licks from a guitar player that you think, well, this guy has some really great phrasing and it really sounds guitar-like in whatever way that you think that it should sound like, then work on really playing it just exactly as he plays it. Maybe find some simple examples and then try and imitate those solos. Learn them and play along with the record, and see if you can get really close to that phrasing, and then see if when you can play that, if you can also start to get the lines that you play anyway to sound more guitar-like, or that will have that nice phrasing. Because the way you write it, I think a lot of it is also just about keeping with getting some more experience and just keeping on trying to really get a better connection with the instrument, because you need really a lot of time to really get phrasing down. That's just something that's technically so demanding that you need to work on it. And I think imitating solos is, at least for me, something that worked really well.
Definitely couldn't agree with Jens more there. One thing I'll add is that I personally like to transcribe other instrumentalists as a guitar player because it helps me get a different approach if I'm transcribing a trumpet player or a piano player, because I'm not necessarily overly concerned about sounding like a guitar player. I think it's just important that I'm able to navigate my instrument well, and sometimes not worrying about that and learning other instruments and how they approach things can kind of develop my own personal sound. That's just my personal preference and opinion. Dave Baker wants to know, my number one question that I can never get a good answer for is this: what are some great patterns to practice regularly? I'm looking for things other than scales. Thanks so much.
If you already know your scales, then I think the next thing you want to work on is actually just to play the harmony that's in the scales. So that means practicing your diatonic arpeggios. Probably the most essential one if you're playing jazz is to play the 7th chord, so in C major, something like this. Whatever kind of scale position you use, and then practice that through it, know that really well. And I think it's not enough to know a pattern, so you need to go a little bit further than just practicing the pattern. And I think actually what you want to do is that you want to practice putting things together and making lines with this. So just to be sort of really concrete about that, if we take this F major 7 arpeggio, because I want to use that on a D minor 7 chord and this is the key of the C major, then I would really just sit down and try and practice lines like, and really what I'm working on here is using different things that I already know and then just combining this arpeggio with a lot of other things that I'm playing. So in that way I'm just trying to see what can I do when I play this, and then what can I make, and how do I get better at making lines using the scale and this arpeggio.
Eric Lideroth asks, is there something a jazz guitarist should focus more on learning compared to other jazz instruments? Meaning, is there a specific skill or way of thinking that is more important when playing jazz guitar?
This is a really difficult question, but that's actually really funny also. Because I was really thinking about this a lot with whether there is a specific skill for a jazz guitar. And I don't really think there is. I mean, if you compare a jazz guitar to a piano, then there are certain things that they can both do, and then there are some things that you can't do on guitar, and on piano you can't bend a note or make vibrato, for instance. But then if you compare it to a saxophone, then you have some other things that you can do and cannot do. So in that way I don't think it's that relevant. But there is one thing that I'm kind of, but that's a question of personal taste also a little bit, that I think is important in terms of playing guitar. I think most of the time the most interesting solos in jazz bands are the piano solos. And the reason why I think that is because the piano player is always comping, so he always has his head in the band. He's always connecting with the drummer and the bass player, and he's always reacting to what they are doing and the soloist. And that means that when he's soloing, he's not just soloing on top, he's much more in the band. And that's why there's a lot more happening in piano players and piano solos often. And I think guitar players need to think like that as well. And you do that by just comping a lot. So in that way, maybe there is a specific skill that you can learn on jazz guitar that you don't necessarily learn on a horn player. At least I find that a lot of horn players don't do that. They just play on top. And some guitar players do that as well. But I think that this idea, and that's just my opinion, but I think that this idea of really playing in the band is something that can add really a lot to the music.
Roland Ramirez asks, I'm really eager to learn more theory and dive into jazz. I want to learn everything I possibly can. My question is, do you think it's easier to learn from an experienced musician, teacher, or learn on your own? Which approach do you think is fastest and more effective?
I think if you look at me and if you look at Brent, then we're definitely students of other people. So we studied with teachers, and I think, as far as I remember, Brent studied with Peter Bernstein, and I also had really great teachers. So definitely a teacher is someone that can help you make progress a lot faster. That's going to be way more efficient than if you have to do it all by yourself. That said, you need to find a good teacher, and a good teacher also needs to be the right teacher for you. So of course you can have people who are good teachers but don't inspire you or don't work in a way that fits with you. And you also have to sort of put the effort in yourself, so you also have to be responsible for what you're doing and also evaluate what's going on and make sure that that works. really what a teacher does is he listens to you play, and then he's going to give you feedback, and he's going to tell you what to practice and what to work on, and the order that you need to work on it, and also maybe how you need to work on it. And that's really what you're kind of paying him for, because all the information, all the scales and the pictures and fingerings and stuff like that, you can find that online for free, but you can't find somebody's ears and somebody's vision and plan for free on the internet. That's where you need a teacher.
Like Jen said, I don't think there's really any substitute from having a teacher who can respond to your own personal needs. And whether that's someone you see regularly or if it's someone that you check in with from time to time, I think having that is important. And beyond that, that's why I'm an advocate for courses, because, while all the free content online is really great and videos like this are really great, it's all scattered everywhere, and it can really be hard if you don't have an actual process. So definitely have some form of a teacher to at least occasionally guide you along and check in with you, or also check out as well some courses that will really give you a path and a plan to move along rather than just not knowing where to go and wandering aimlessly. So I want to thank Jens Larsen so much for just giving of his time, giving of his energy to my community. I really appreciate him. He's an outstanding guy. We also had a podcast episode together. I'll link that up as well if you want to listen to a little bit more of me and him talking together. Really appreciate him. Make sure you also check out his channel, Jens Larsen. I'll have that linked up as well. All right, that's all for the video today. I'm signing off, and I'll see you in the next one.